Hey, what is going on, everybody? This is your life coach, Tammy Ward, coming at you. And I wanted to chat with everyone about boundaries and the guilt we have that society has put on us from wanting to set boundaries, wanting to understand boundaries, wanting to know how or, find that courage to do so. And around this time, especially here in 2020, I think it's more important that we try and figure out what exactly are the boundaries that we need for ourselves to be able to overcome the obstacles in our life. Now, what I'm about to talk about is going to just give a roundup about guilt, really, and how you can establish boundaries that will just have you give a little bit more courage to yourself and possibly bring out some of those wonderful things that you have inside you if you would just let go of the things and the people that prevent you from living your best life, because that's what I'm all about. My whole life, I did not even know about boundaries. I didn't even know there was such a thing as boundaries. And until I figured out how to specifically come across and how to sometimes set a boundary without even telling the person, or setting a boundary without even going into a store, understanding that I can do it for me, not for anyone else, just specifically for me. And that's what boundaries is all about. Boundaries are there for us to set in motion to live our best life. And so this is a little nitty gritty that I wanted to break down with you guys today. Because guilt is just a wasted emotion. It truly is. I mean, there's times where we have so many assumptions in life and so many things happen where we feel so guilty about it, but we're not understanding that, like, guilt is just useless. I mean, there's no reason for it because we're putting thoughts and mindset around what people are thinking that's affecting us, and we don't need to do that. And once you can realize that the main intention behind feeling guilty is to live life and make choice in that right direction, guilt will no longer be an issue. After that, once you understand that it's all about choice, then there's not much to feel guilty about, right? So the meaning behind what it is to be a good person is the guilt we put on ourselves. That's pretty much what happens in life. So we either put them on ourselves or we put them on others, family members, coworkers, everything in between. And so it truly keeps us from having and loving a loving, meaningful relationship, not just with others, but with ourselves as well. And so I'm going to give you a few things to think about here when it talks about, have you ever had the feeling of wanting to, speak up, but you don't because that fear that you're going to have that another person's going to judge you or another person's, it's almost like you have, most of the time, the stream of guilt-based conversations begins in our thoughts. And here are a few, and let me know in the comments below if you have some of these or if you have other ones that you want to chat about. So, if you say, as you're doing, guilt-based conversations, you say, well, if I say something, it might hurt their feelings and they will hold it against me, right? You might say something, someone takes offense to it, then they hold it against you for however long. How annoying is that, right? So then you don't set any boundary on that conversation because you already are feeling so guilty about it. Or you could, sometimes we say, well, that is who they are. They always have an opinion about something. So let me just let them rant. Let me let them vent, whatever. But my favorite guilt-based conversation is, well, they need to vent about everything to me because I'm the only one who's here to help and support them. Well, the reason why you're the only one that helps and support them is because everyone else is fed up, right? Most likely. Or you could do that, you just say yes and you do what they want most of the time. You go where they want to eat, you do what they want to do. You have conversations of what they want to talk about because you don't want to have to hear them rant about you, right? I mean, that happens too. So how do all these guilt-based thoughts convince that you're doing the right thing, right? all those things, you convince yourself that you're doing the right thing, but what you're actually doing is a wrong thing for you. I mean, look, you get to a point to where setting boundaries is making the choice that you have balance in your life, right? I mean, that's really all it is just that, it's just that balance. It's that balance overall. Because, on months like what most people say, you can have your cake and eat it too. You can. The reason why you can is because we're limitless, right? We're limitless in our thoughts. We're limitless of what we can do. We're limitless in everything. And so, let's have a few examples to see how we can be limitless in setting our boundaries. Say for instance, do you hang out with someone who criticizes what you're doing, right? All the time they criticize what you're doing. If so, a possible boundary could be for you to set or turn the focus on them, to set and turn the focus on them and limit the amount of time you spend with them. So say they call up and you're like, hey, I want to hang. And you're like, look, what you can do to set a boundary without even like telling them, this is just a boundary for you, is to be like, look, I got like 30 minutes, okay? I got 30 minutes. Can we meet up for coffee? Or shoot, hey, there's a park right around the street. Let's go for a walk or even like, I'm going to the grocery store. Would you like to join me? This is a time that you can be with that friend, but yet, be in different atmospheres that you're choosing, so that way it's on your ground is basically what it is. If you choose to hang out with this person who criticizes you and things like that, then set boundaries and limits of how long you're going to spend with them and what the conversation is going to be about. Eventually the goals that you want to set for the boundaries is to begin to chat with them about how you truly feel and about what topics you will or won't discuss. So eventually, as this time goes on and you've set this boundary on like, yes, I'll meet here, or, can we go over here? It eventually will bring you that confidence and that courage to be able to talk about and say, listen, I don't want to talk about politics. I don't want to talk about your grandma no more, whatever it is, right? I mean, I remember one time, I can't quite remember where it was or what it was on, but I heard someone talk about a friend they had and how this friend was going through a divorce. And this friend was like talking so much about the divorce that at first, the person who was talking about it was saying, look, you know what? I listened because they needed somebody right then. They needed a friend. So I listened about the divorce. I listened about how crazy the ex was, all this other stuff. But like 6 months later, their friend was still talking about the divorce. And the person listening was like, I am so fed up. And finally just like, look, I love hanging out with you. I want to hang out with you, but I am so done with talking about your divorce. So if you want to talk about your divorce, let's talk about how you can overcome it. Let's talk about ways to support you to get past it and through it, right? I mean, because that's a boundary in itself. Talking about my own situations and my own boundaries, I had terrible guilt and set boundaries with my own family. I mean, terrible. The boundary is that what I had to realize I had to do is I had to set a boundary of like not talking about my struggles, because it was almost like they couldn't even handle it. It was almost as if, the pleasantry of being around family, especially around the holidays, can have a lot of guilt on us. But, that choice was made by me by not wanting to talk about my struggles, because it just didn't matter, right? It didn't matter what I was going through. It didn't matter, right? There was no space that could be held for a listening ear. And so I made the choice, I did it so that way I wouldn't feel judged or criticized, right? I just didn't want to hear them be like, oh, here you go again. Or in the sense of, not here go again, but in the sense of like, no one can fix you and things like that. Because that often is what happens. How many times have you turned around and you're always there for people, but you turn around and like no one's there for you? That the main reason is because you've not set boundaries on what you will and will not accept in your life. If you don't know yet, let me be the first to tell you that you are not responsible for other people's feelings or the outcome of their life. You're not. You can hang out with people, you can have conversation with people, but the moment you feel that it affects you and how you want to live your life is the moment you know you need to set boundaries. I mean, let's look at Brene Brown. She said this quote, and I'm going to read it here. It says, it's from her, the book, Gifts of Imperfection. She says, it's also impossible to practice compassion from a place of resentment. If we're going to practice acceptance and compassion, we need boundaries and accountability. So recognizing and being aware of the ways guilt keeps us trapped helps us from setting limits on people, place, or things, right? Boundaries can be limitless. So like Brene said, we need boundaries and accountability. So the accountability comes in the part of like, when someone crosses that boundary, you tell them your boundary, they cross that boundary, you got to hold them accountable by saying, look, that's my boundary. This is not something we're going to talk about. Just like what I do with my family. We're not going to talk about me. I'm not going to tell you how my life is going. I'm good. Here's the pleasantries. Everybody's fine. Thank you so much. I'm not going to go into depth because there's no need for it. I'm not going to be able to receive the things that I need. So why say it at all? You know, so how can you start this today? How can you start this boundaries around guilt? First and foremost, the one thing you can do is just give yourself permission. Give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to set that boundary, right? In my life coaching business, I always say the work works. No matter what you're doing, the work works. And I want you to use the same concept in giving yourself permission to set boundaries. It comes from the action of setting the boundary. Guilt has no place to land when you do what's right for you. That's what's up, right? If you're doing what's right for you, guilt's not going to come in. If you're doing what serves you, guilt's not going to come in. Now, if you are finding that it serves you to be mean to people, I ask you to dig a little bit deeper because I'm sure it's not. I'm sure you think about it, the thought comes in, the process is hard. But for the boundary, you give yourself permission, you accept it, you forgive what has happened in the past. You don't think about that shit anymore. It's done, it's done, it's done. You know, don't be looking for it. Don't be expecting it to happen. You just forgive it and that's it. And then the courage to set it, the courage to set that boundary, the courage to say the boundary, the courage to speak about the boundary. And that is really the boundary around guilt. It's all a choice that you make on whether you're going to continue to allow something to happen or you're going to nip it in the bud because the work works. So give yourself permission. Give yourself that permission to be able to speak the things you need to speak and be, I often say in life, we have to tell people how to love us. And to do that, sometimes we have to set boundaries, whether it's internally or outward. The guilt behind it is no more. That guilt behind, well, they just need me because I need someone to vent to. Or, that's just who they are. That's no more. Be who you are. Stand up for you today. All right, guys. And until then, keep loving, keep growing, and keep embracing life boldly. Talk to you soon.